Hey everyone, welcome to episode 40. It's Leslie Tagorda, your brand astrologer and designer. And oh my gosh, I just wanted to thank you so much for making space again for me during the week to inspire you with some practical, spiritual, and star magic that you can use in your business. Today is going to be a little bit different because I actually want to talk about our ancestors. All right. What do our ancestors have to do with the success of our business? Well, actually, quite a bit. What I want you to know is that our ancestors desire to be recognized and they actually want to support us in our journey and our success in our business. And I want to give you the tips and the inspiration today so that you too can give thanks during this very sacred week of Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, whatever you celebrate, so that you can tap into your ancestral roots and your spiritual roots so that you can cultivate this for your success in your business. Aloha! Welcome to the Savvy Luminary, an astrology podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, an Aquarius boss woman, a brand designer, and business astrologer. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers just like you reach your highest potential and become the luminaries you are star charted to be. In addition to talking about our ancestors, I'll be going over a little bit about our blue full moon in Taurus on the 31st and the astrology of this coming week. I'll also be ending this podcast episode today with a Q&A segment. Earlier this week, I asked my Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary, if they had any questions about their astrology and business. I also asked in Instagram. So make sure, if you're not already, join my free Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary, because I'm dropping lots of wisdom there and always asking questions, as well as on Instagram at New Moon Creative Co. Now that we're officially in Scorpio season and we have Day of the Dead and All Hallows Eve and Halloween and Samhain coming up, you know that the veil has been lifted between the physical world that we live in and the spiritual world. And it's this time of year where I always get these kinds of like loving vibes that I feel coming from my paternal grandma. My grandma died in 2014. Was it 2014? Yes, it was 2014. She died in early January in 2014. And at that moment that she passed away, she was in the hospice. And it was overnight, and I was sleeping at her house while she was in hospice. And during the night, I had this very vivid dream. And I'm not really someone that gets a lot of communications or visions in my dreams. So when I have a vivid dream, they are super, super, super important. And I saw this little being, this young woman that I instantly recognized as my grandma as a young woman. And she had this mischievous twinkle in her eyes, and she was so happy and she was so sparkly, and she was wearing this beautiful yellow dress, and she flew up to me and she didn't say any words to me, yet I could feel her love pouring from her to me. And then she handed me a gift, and it was a check, right? It was just like so randomly. My grandma gives me a check, and on the check it says $75,000. And I was so grateful. I have no idea why my grandma would give me $75,000. I didn't even think that she had $75,000 to give me, but I guess, in the spiritual world, you have as much money as you need. And at that time in 2014, I was really struggling. I was struggling in my business. I wasn't really making all of that much money. My now husband and I weren't yet engaged. We were thinking about, living together. We weren't even there yet, right? And so anyway, she gives me this check and she flies off. And I was like, oh, I felt this like profound sense of peace. But in my dream, I knew that my grandma had left this physical world. So when I was woken up the next morning by a phone call from the hospice telling me that my grandma had passed overnight, I said, yeah, I thank you for letting me know, even though I had already known. And so it was super interesting just to kind of follow up on that gift that she gave me. A few months later, when my now husband and I were moving in, like we live in San Francisco, and at that time in 2014, real estate was just like really, really, really crazy. And he had this rent controlled apartment for many, many years. And his landlord was trying to buy him out, right? And they were negotiating a certain amount of money. And I kept on telling my husband, ask for $75,000, ask for $75,000. And he couldn't quite get there to ask for $75,000. And he actually got a substantial amount of money, which actually helped us with a down payment. That's another story. But I was kind of pissed when my husband didn't ask for the full $75,000, because I was like, hey, that's my gift from my grandma. But anyway, it was still a great gift. And what I wanted to really tell you the story, the reason why I wanted to tell you the story is that our ancestors are here to support us. We just need to ask, we just need to listen, and we just need to recognize them and give them thanks, right? There's this beautiful quote that I found from an Indonesian sci-fi author. His name is Toba Beta, and he quoted, "You are the fairy tale told by your ancestors." And my goodness, how beautiful is that? I love that tale. I love thinking back at, all the ancestors that we do know, all of the ancestors that we've forgotten. But at some certain point, way back then, they were thinking about the future, right? They were thinking of some kind of grand future that now we are living, right? So of course, they want to support us. So today I want to set the space for today's episode so we can really bring in the expansiveness and the support and the feel that we get from our ancestors and our spiritual guides in the way that we run our business. So today's mantra for this episode, our centering mantra, if you could just, plant your feet on the ground and take a beautiful clearing breath, gather up all of your energies. And today's mantra is, I sense and live the inner wisdom gifted by my ancestors. I am their dream come true. Let that sit within you for just a moment. Again, take a deep breath and either repeat after me or just sit with these words. I sense and live the inner wisdom gifted by my ancestors. I am their dream come true. So let's honor our ancestors, right? Later this week, of course, in the Western world, we are celebrating Halloween. And while Halloween has quite the commercial effect, right? Selling candies, selling costumes, selling this and that so that we can all have fun, even though, Halloween is a little bit different in 2020, right? I've already spent my share of money on various things that I may or may not need for Halloween. But really, this Halloween is an expression of a much more beautiful and sacred celebration or festival. Of course, if you're Latin American or you've watched the movie Coco, you are familiar with the Day of the Dead, right? Halloween is also kind of a Western extension of a Gallic festival, Samhain, right? Or All Saints Day or All Souls Day. Basically, this kind of global honoring of that we humans have created to honor the season where this veil between the physical and the spiritual soften, right? Where we can honor our ancestors, the ancestors that we still remember, our more recent ancestors, as well as the ancestors that we may have forgotten, right? Before there was this modern world that we lived in, that industrial age, organized religion, like the last 400 or 500 years. Before that, we all have ancestors from traditional and indigenous cultures. Usually these cultures were based in animism or just the love of Mother Earth and the land and previous ancestors and spirits, right? So I don't know how you feel about this, but everything, I get so overwhelmed by all of this because it's so close to me and I love this. And I've been really called to work with this kind of energy over the last few years. And it's very new to me. I am no way an expert here. So I all encourage you to follow your intuition, follow your heart, and, ask your ask your grandparents, ask the elders in your community about kind of some of the spiritual traditions that have held on, even if they have come from an organized religion like Christianity or Judaism. Oftentimes, the indigenous culture's spirituality is still embedded by certain traditions that live on. So I'm curious to know what you do to honor your ancestors and what you will do this coming week as we come across, the time of the Day of the Dead and Halloween and Samhain. I'm curious to know what you will do to honor your ancestors. For me, I've already started, right? I mentioned earlier, I told you the story about my grandma and gifting me that money that we needed to start a family. And so I brought back my work altar, and this time I added a few more elements to really honor my ancestors, especially my grandma who's helped me so much, the ancestors that I remember, but also the ancestors that I don't remember. So if you look behind me right now, if you're watching this on YouTube, or I actually added a photo of this already on Instagram earlier today, I added a few other things to honor my ancestors on my altar. Generally, my altar is really for work, focused on visibility, focused on abundance. And today I just wanted to add a little bit something and really gift and honor and pay respect to my ancestors. So on my altar, I picked one little lemon blossom. Oh my gosh, this lemon blossom really called to me because it was so fragrant. And I only needed just one fragrant, fresh lemon blossom that smells divine. I added it to my altar to give my ancestors some sweetness and some thanks. I also gifted my ancestors a little bit of clear spirits. It's just a little bit of vodka in a shot glass because I once worked with a healer who told me that my ancestors love to brew some kind of homemade clear liquor. So that makes sense. If I do happen to like to drink. That's one of my vices. But so I offered that little vodka to my ancestors. There's also a few flowers, and I had one of my grandma's rings on there, and I'm wearing it right now. It used to fit 4 years ago, but it doesn't right now, and it's this beautiful white jade. So anyway, I would love to know what you're doing, and if you need some help really learning how to get in touch with your ancestors or honor your ancestors, one beautiful place to start is with a book called Ancestral Medicine. I'm digging into it right now, and this book, Ancestral Medicine, Rituals for Personal and Family Healing by Daniel Four. I'm really, really enjoying it because he gives you all kinds of tips on the different types of well ancestors that you can work with and how to get in touch and honor them in your own way. So remember, it's really important for the success of your business, for the success and the abundance for you, to really recognize and honor all of your ancestors, your deceased relatives, your forgotten ancestors, your spiritual guides, even the spiritual guides from non-blood ancestors. Like for me as an astrologer, to honor astrologers that have passed on, to honor designers that have passed on. If you're a scientist, to honor scientists that have passed on, to ask for their support in the work that you are here to do today. I'm going to mix things up today, and we're going to be talking about the full moon in Taurus, our second full moon. But before we talk about the full moon, I would just like to thank a recent reviewer from New Zealand. Her name is Paige, and she left this amazing review on Apple Podcasts. She says, "Amazing insights. I'm a newly astro-curious entrepreneur, and this podcast breaks everything down so it's easy to understand, even if you're quite new to looking at this sort of work. Leslie steps you through using astrology as another tool to build your business, which I love. 3 episodes in, I already had a huge amount of value. Will definitely add this to my weekly listen." Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Paige, for the lovely review. And if you found this podcast helpful, I really urge you to head over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leave a rating and review, because your rating and review elevates the algorithm that shares this podcast with more listeners. Please help me get this very important message of empowering ourselves through astrology out to more listeners. So consider sharing a review or even passing it along to one of your business besties. All right, so let's dive into the full moon in Taurus. Oh my gosh, we get to have a full moon on Halloween evening, and it's on a Saturday. But of course, it's 2020. So Halloween, the festivities that you might do on Halloween might be a little bit dampered, but there's still lots of reason to get out and howl at the moon and celebrate our ancestors. So full moon on October 31st, the second full moon of October, so a blue moon, happens exactly at 7:49 a.m. Pacific. If you want to see a chart for the full moon, head over to thesavvyluminary.com and check out the show notes for this episode, because wow. So of course, during this full moon, we are still in Mercury retrograde. We are still in Mars retrograde. We are still in Neptune and Uranus retrograde. And wow, it is a powerful full moon. So at the time of the full moon, it is at the axes between Scorpio and Taurus at 8 degrees. So the moon is also conjunct with Uranus. Woo! So expect the unexpected, especially when it comes to your emotions, right? Normally on a full moon, the rituals that you want to do are about giving thanks, about letting go, about gratitude, right? We're basically making room for more of our intentions to come in. New full moons are not really times to plant the seeds for intention to come in, rather creating the gratitude and appreciation so that we can amplify certain things and making space, letting go, forgiving, releasing things that hold us back from attaining our intentions. When we think about the Scorpio sun shining its full light onto the Taurus moon, we're looking at elements of abundance, right? Taurus and Scorpio represent the financial axes, right? Taurus is our own money, our resources, the physical resources, like the land we live on, the farm that we've built. Taurus is everything about abundance and sensation and real earthiness, right? And that's the moon. And then the sun in Scorpio is about shared resources. It's about the money that you may have with a partner, or the debt that you borrow so that you can invest and leverage somebody else's money to help you grow and to help them grow. So it's shared resources. And so if you think about, for you, what is coming up in terms of what is blocking you from this sense of abundance or from receiving abundance, right? So think about the things that you can let go, whether it's old stories, maybe it's old family stories, maybe it's old stories that are so deeply woven in your family, generation after generation after generation of money struggles. Maybe it's time to honor that and let go. Of course, because this full moon happens on All Hallows Eve, on Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, whatever you celebrate, of course you're wanting to bring in your ancestors and spirit guides to help you get to the root of what needs to be brought into the light this full moon, to let go and release so that you can bring in more financial abundance into your life and business. Also, when the full moon is exact, we have Mercury and Saturn forming a tight square. So what does that mean? Well, Mercury is at almost its final end, the final stages of its retrograde cycle. It's already popped back into Libra at 26 degrees on full moon, and it's squaring the other cardinal Saturn in Capricorn at 26 degrees. So even though on that day, you might find a loss for words, you might find it really difficult to talk about your emotions in a way that feels constrained, Or on the other end, somebody might not really allow you to say what you need to say. So think about some other ways that you can communicate, maybe without words, but to still get your message sent loud and clear. So whatever ritual you create for yourself for the full moon on the 31st, make sure you involve your well ancestors, make sure you involve your spirit guides. Give thanks and appreciation to all that you have in terms of abundance, and make an intention to let go and forgive all of the things that hold you back from the financial abundance you desire. Okay, so now on to the astrology for the week of October 25th through the 31st. We've already talked about the full moon, so I'm not going to talk about that. But on the 25th, on Sunday the 25th, we are at the halfway point of our Mercury retrograde, where the sun meets retrograding Mercury. This is called the combust. You heard me talking about a little bit last week when we were at the halfway point of the Mars retrograde, when that started the whole Mercury retrograde. A combust at the halfway point of a retrograde cycle is the time in the cycle like the full moon phase. Everything is in full illumination. And because Mercury represents our mindset, and Mercury in Scorpio is really about us communicating through our intuition, where we have all of our channels open. Oh my goodness, this midway point on the 25th, really expect a flood of intuitive hits. So really make space and, pay attention to the inspiration that may come. Don't dismiss anything, but really try to understand it. You might get your intuitive hits through like just ideas that seem to download in your mind, or you might get a full body sensation, or you might see beautiful visions, or you might hear things. So really pay attention on the 25th to see what kind of communications come from your intuition that are wanting to be heard that day. Then on Tuesday, the 27th, oh my goodness, we have Venus entering Libra from Virgo, and we have Mercury in its retrograde motion dipping its toes back into Libra from Scorpio. So even though the sun is in Scorpio and we're feeling really Scorpio because we also have Mercury in Scorpio, we're gonna get a little touch of softness. Thank goodness, right? A little touch of connection, a little touch of love and beauty, right? I think this is kind of a really beautiful energy that we are going to have. So maybe with Mercury entering Libra again on the 27th, this is your chance to reconnect maybe with old contacts or old associates or people that you've kind of lost touch with that you wish you hadn't. Maybe within your family, you have a little something that you want to talk about or reconsider, right? This would be a really good time to touch on those old unfinished conversations with the people that are supposed to be closest to you, with Mercury going back into Libra for a touch. So with Venus entering Libra, she'll be there until November 21st. So we get almost a month of Venus being in her home sign of Libra. This is just really kind of, to me, like a really amorous time, right? So all of those new moon intentions that you set for in Libra, right, with partnering, this is your time to take action with really reaching out to those people that you want to co-create and collaborate with. This is the time to really show your affection to the people that you really love the most. And if you've been wanting to start a creative project or anything, or do something in collaboration, like maybe a fun creative project with a friend or something, this would be the perfect season to get started with that. So that's it for this last week of October, the astrology of October 2020. We are soon moving into November. We're working on our November 2020 calendar. And if you want your monthly report, I now offer that for free on my newsletter. And you can go over and sign up at thesavvyluminary.com/newsletter to sign up for my monthly newsletter. Or if you want a printable PDF or a downloadable ICS that you can plug into your Outlook calendar, on Patreon, I have these calendars available for a very low cost, and you can get them at patreon.com/The Savvy Luminary. Okie dokie. So we are going to try something new with this episode. I want to have a little segment for a Q&A because I know people love learning about themselves, learning about their businesses, and I love sharing this knowledge so that you can make decisions based on your unique cosmic design in your business. So earlier this week, I posed a question in my free Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary. If you're not already there, come on over. You're invited. It's so much fun. So in the group, I just asked, ask me anything because I love to offer this advice. So a bunch of you had asked questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer as many as possible. So I chose the questions I felt would touch the most people. So Lindsay, who is a Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, and a Leo rising, wanted to know, how do I use my unique constellation of my Sun, Moon, and Rising to create a brand that is authentic and will best serve my soul's purpose? Oh my goodness, I love that so much. Even if you don't know anything about astrology, just hearing Cancer, Cancer, Leo, right? We have two water signs, your sun and your moon in Cancer, water. And then we have Leo rising, lots of fire, right? So water and fire, what do you think about? Steam, right? I just love just thinking, visualizing people's from their primary elements. So if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that your sun, your moon, and your rising are your three foundational energies in your cosmic design that we spend a whole lifetime fine-tuning and raising the vibration. I know that there's lots of different shiny objects in the solar system that we get to chase and that we might get distracted from. But if we don't return to our fundamental energies and constantly learn to up level, because life is all about evolution, right? We're never done. When we continually go back to our primary foundational energies to really fine tune them, they're like a musical instrument that when these three primary energies are really fine tuned, they work in harmony and they work in resonance. And with any fine instrument like you, when your energies are fully harmonized and resonant, your vibration travels so much further. Your sound is more rich and fuller and more brilliant. So for all of us, I want us to work on our sun, moon, and rising over and over and over again, revisiting them to see how much more we can elevate. So, Lindsay, to answer your question, finally, our sun sign is the way, what we do and what we do so well. I love to look at our sun sign in our brand as kind of our expertise and our soul. I mean, of course, there's our soul mission and our soul purpose. There's other things that, symbolize that in our chart. But at our core, the heart of what we do is our sun. So knowing that you are a Cancer sun without knowing the position of it, knowing Cancer is about being emotionally secure, holding space for healing, nurturing, and it's the divine mother. So using kind of your core energies and really claiming your expertise as a nurturer, as one that creates safe communities for healing to happen. Know that that is your expertise and live confidently in that clarity. Your moon sign also, right, is Cancer, but our moon sign in our brand represents a little bit different. It represents our inner drives, like how we want to be recognized, what success means to us, what we need to kind of nourish in ourselves and kind of heal within ourselves and kind of give a little bit of TLC because we need to create our own emotional security because, moon ruled by Cancer, we need emotional security in our lives to rise, right? Emotionally root to rise. And then so with your Cancer and your moon sign, similar to your sun, those things are aligned. You want to feel recognized as divine feminine, as a healer, as a nurturer. I think that's so beautiful because your sun and your moon are aligned. It has that same frequency. And then the other energy that's a little bit different, not a little bit, a whole lot different from your watery and nurturing sun and moon is your rising sign. And our rising sign in our brand is how other people already experience us, right? It's our leadership ability, the way that we are meant to guide others, and the way that we are meant to show up, because already people are experiencing us like that. So we want to kind of, meet them where they are. So fill in those gaps. And oftentimes our rising sign is a gap, is a stretch, because, our inner self is saying, oh, but we are a Cancer. And then somebody's experiencing us as a Leo. So of course there's a gap that you need to integrate and fill so that you can show up as a Leo guide. Leo guide being bold and confident and fiery and passionate and creative, right? And of course, Leo, heart-centered. So we combine those three energies for all of us, sun, moon, and rising. What do you do best? Your sun. How do you want to feel? Your moon. And how are you meant to lead? Your rising. As we understand and really deepen into the knowledge of our sun and our moon and our rising, this really helps us with things like imposter syndrome or showing up. So Rachel asks a similar question, and she's a Scorpio sun, Libra rising, and Pisces moon, and she's had a long career in copywriting and marketing. But she says that she's like kind of suffering from imposter syndrome as she goes through it all right now. And to me, our astrology really helps us break through imposter syndrome, because what I talk about in branding and astrology-based branding is that we don't have to compare and we don't need to copy, because our natal charts are completely individual. There is not a single person, even if you're a twin or a triplet, that has the exact same astrological natal chart as you. So when we build our brand based on our own specific cosmic design, how can we have imposter syndrome? Because we're focusing on our deepest, innermost, innate design, right? So Rachel, when you focus on the transformational empowerment of your sun, you focus on becoming that friendly, peaceful leader who desires to be seen as empathetic and compassionate, right? Those are all of your Scorpio, Libra, and Pisces foundational energies. When you focus on those and how you bring that out through your work, you don't have to be an imposter. You can be perfectly, imperfectly you. So Michelle asks, and Michelle has an Aries sun, Cancer moon, and Gemini rising. Michelle asks, in a time where people are becoming hyper-focused on triggers and language, how can we find ways to relate to our ideal customers without stepping on unknown landmines? Such a great question, because, language is quickly shifting, and it's really amazing that it's shifting so quickly, and that we are becoming more cognizant of the empowering language and the inclusive language that we all need to use. Yet because language is changing so quickly, and because there's so many different perspectives that we are now bringing in, this is all new territory for us, right? So inevitably, all of us are going to inevitably make a mistake and step into one of those big piles of poop. Right? So, when that happens, and of course, I have made that mistake, right? Having to relearn how to address people when they've chosen non-binary identities, or changing language that, I grew up in the 90s, and some of the language that we use in the 90s is not acceptable today, and catching myself and making mistakes and asking for forgiveness, right? Acknowledging when I make a mistake, right? That's the first thing for all of us, is like, okay, we're all human. We're all going to make a mistake. And if somebody's going to judge us because we made a mistake, even though, we've acknowledged our mistake, then that's on them, right? So if we make a mistake, we first just have to understand and say like, hey, I'm human. I make mistakes. Thank you for letting me know. So we acknowledge, and then we promise to do better, right? That's all we can really do in a respectful and kind way. Now, there may be people that are just going to always be unhappy with no matter what we do. We then, of course, just need to accept that. That's not necessarily, built by design. And now there are definitely some of us that have, lots of strong Sagittarius, right? This, Sagittarius is very, um, on its low shadow vibration, it can be very prejudicial, very judgmental, right? Because a Sagittarian ultimately knows that their morals are the best, right? I'm just bringing up Sagittarius. I have a Sagittarius moon, right? And Sagittarians, because of that way that they feel, that kind of entitlement that they feel, they are classic foot in the mouthers, right? Michelle, I'm not saying that you have that, but there are people that by design have those kinds of tendencies more than other people, right? So when we think about communications, we want to look at our own chart in terms of course, starting with our rising sign. What is the leader that I'm supposed to be? So you are a Gemini leader. You have a big message to share. You are here to create dialogue. You are here to teach. You are here to speak, right? You're here to use your voice. Your third house key is your communication key. It's how you are meant to use your words, right? So of course, if you're a leader, Gemini leader, using your voice to speak and to empower others, using your third house key as you're a Leo on the third house. So using heartfelt language, using kind language, using loving and sovereign language. Now, of course, we are thinking about our ideal customers, but we don't want to focus too much on our seventh house because we don't need to become our seventh house. We need to become more of our first house and really only touching into the seventh house to understand where our ideal customers are coming from. What are their aspirations? What are the problems that they have that we are designed to help fix? So I know I kind of went around about the chart to give you understanding of the kinds of language. But for you, really just use your bold language, use your language, you be the Gemini leader, but talk from this heartfelt way, from that Leo prideful way, and also really acknowledging that we're just all humans. We're going to make mistakes. So Sarah asks, Sarah, who is a Cancer rising, Aries sun and moon, asks about advice as to when to schedule visibility and alignment with the stars. So my short answer, right, without knowing more of your chart and thinking about an answer that everyone can use about visibility, right? There are definitely times in the year when it's easier for us to become more visible, like when our sun is crossing our midheaven at the very top of the sky, or our sun is crossing our rising sign. You know how people are already seeing us, but those are kind of like 2 seasons in a year. And if we're looking to show up on a regular basis with visibility in accordance with our own stars, then I am going to look to your moon sign. Some traditional astrologers and health astrologers will talk about a moon phase where our moon crosses our moon as a most fertile time of the month for a woman, right? So if you think about fertility, when your moon crosses where your moon meets where your moon is, kind of your lunar return, that happens once a month. And for women, it normally coincides with their fertility seasons. And so when you think about the idea of fertility is that we are creating something new. We have this burst of energy that can then ripple forth in the world. So if we want to think about our visibility, you might want to harness that energy. So if you are an Aries moon, look at the degree of your Aries moon, and whenever the moon is in Aries, you probably feel emotionally secure. You probably feel really good because that energy is returning to your sun and your moon, but we're focusing on the moon here. So naturally, when you're feeling good is always a good time to show up and be more visible. So once a month, we all get a lunar return. Look for the degree of your own moon and notice that sign, notice that degree, and notice what happens when the moon crosses over your natal moon. And if those times feel really good for you, if you notice month after month that that tends to be a good time for you, you already know that that's a good time to schedule things in your work week that allow you to be in alignment because you're already feeling good. And for those of you like Clow who has trouble focusing with the same theme of the sun, moon, and rising, so Clow is an Aries sun, Virgo moon, and Taurus rising. How do you focus? Well, we always lead with our rising, right? Having a routine, a daily routine that grounds us so that we can feel and start our day off with productivity helps us focus, right? So, what do you need to do as a Taurus rising every single day to start off your day? So, with Taurus rising, I imagine that's getting in touch with nature or literally like grounding your feet or moving your body somehow, right? It's probably your Virgo energy, your moon sign, right? And all the time, if we are not really conscious in the way that we are living, like living through our solar consciousness for Cloud as our Aries sun consciousness, we can fall back in the past patterns of our moon sign. That's why our moon sign, we feel so connected to our moon sign because we always fall back there, right? It's like when we fall down, we know that our moon will catch us. And so Virgo moon, with its need to be perfect, right? With its kind of its mutable modality, is always looking for new things, new solutions, trying to be perfect. And when it can't be perfect, it just kind of drops the ball and moves on to something else, right? I suspect, Cloud, that is your issue. Right? So what I would love for you to do is lead with your rising. Make sure you start your day doing something that is going to embody your Taurus energy. And then when you feel like moving on to something because you can't perfect it, right? The frustrations of your moon sign, move to your Aries. What can you then add more boldness into? What can you put more initiative into so that you can really help yourself focus? Okay, I have time for one more question, and I deeply apologize that I didn't get to all of these questions. These are so much fun to answer, but we only have so much time for an episode. Otherwise, you'll be listening to this forever, and I could be talking forever. So, last question comes from Lou on IG, on Instagram. And Lou is a Capricorn sun, Sagittarius moon, and a Libra rising who is approaching her Saturn return. Oh my gosh, Lou. You know, Saturn returns are so awesome because for all of you that are going through your Saturn return or approaching your Saturn return, welcome to official adulthood, right? When Saturn comes back to the place that it was at the time you were born, you know, if you're lucky, you get 2 of these, but it signifies a status change. It signifies not just a status change in like, you know, you're changing a job, but you're changing from like a child to an adult. If you get to your second Saturn return right around 60 plus or minus, that status change is now from an adult to a sage or to an elder, right? We don't really have a great word for it in Western cultures, but you know, there's something really eminent about being a sage and elder in your community. So for you approaching your first Saturn return, oh my goodness, get ready for a shakeup because you know, when you're traveling from your childhood to your adulthood, it's kind of like if you've gone to college and you moved out of your childhood room and you moved to college and you don't really want to bring all your kids' stuff with you, right? You might want to bring a couple of pictures with you that reminds you of your besties from high school. You might want to bring, you know, a couple of your favorite bags or a couple of favorite clothes, but for the most part, you kind of want to leave your old self behind. So I want you to think about it in that way. You are leaving a whole part of you behind. So as you are approaching your Saturn return, I've seen Many entrepreneurs start their businesses during their Saturn return. I started my business when I left Saturn return. Like I quit my corporate job. I dropped a lot of friends. Not like I consciously dropped a lot of friends, but there were a lot of friends that like kind of fell out of my life. Lots of things happened. So really embrace this time. See what you're shedding as you move into this next evolution of your life. All right, everybody. So that was a lot for today. That turned out to be a little bit of a longer episode than I had thought it would be. I really hope you enjoyed this kind of format of the question and answer because I had a lot of fun. So remember, full moon, remember, honor your ancestors and your spiritual guides. And if you don't have yet the tools to get in touch with your ancestors, do a little bit of digging and look up that book called Ancestral Medicine and see what touches your heart. So to close today, again, thank you so much for making the space and time to join me for this episode. Please consider sharing this with some of your business besties so that this episode can get into the ears and hearts of more and more spiritual entrepreneurs like you. So let's close. Please ground your feet again and gather in all of your energies. Take a deep clearing breath. And let's close with the mantra that we opened with. I sense and live the inner wisdom gifted by my ancestors. I am their dream come true. And again. I sense and live the inner wisdom gifted by my ancestors. I am their dream come true. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next week. Bye. Mahalo for listening to this brand new podcast. If you enjoyed learning about astrology for entrepreneurs, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with your business besties and hop over to the Savvy Luminary for links to episode notes and our free Facebook community where you can send me questions about astrology or branding as well as connect with other like-minded businesses.